Welcome everybody to today's Incubator Weekly Show. Today we're talking about web SDKs, JavaScript SDKs, and browser extensions, Chrome extensions. Today we've got Mikhail and Ash. How's it going, guys?
Hey guys, yeah, it's very very interesting
It's
week.
good.
Product, yeah.
Yeah.
We've been discussing the SDK stuff for a few months now, back and forth, and now we're trying to work towards a solution. We have some ideas in mind, but
yeah. We've got platform live on mainnet. We now need a good SDK that we feel developers will have a good time with working with. Mikhail, you've worked with the JavaScript SDK quite a bit. I've worked with the JavaScript SDK quite a bit. And I don't know, for terminology, I guess maybe we'll just call it the current JavaScript SDK for the JavaScript SDK that DCG has built years ago now, which is built on top of libraries that BitPay developed over a decade ago for the core functionality, and then platform support was added to that Dash SDK several years ago, and it's been iterated, and it's a little bit of an old library. Let's just say that, and it's got some cruft, it's got some issues. I've seen some of the issues. We had a developer walkthrough series where we had 10 different outside developers test it. Back then we were using testnet, so that was the source of some of our issues, but many of the other issues were because of the SDK itself. And so we're trying to tackle that head on right now. This show, as I'm giving my preamble, there will be more questions than answers in this show. Just yesterday, I wasn't actually going to have an Incubator Weekly show this week because I didn't really have anything specifically that I wanted to discuss until we had a conversation yesterday in the Dash Discord about SDKs once again. It is a major blocker as far as I'm concerned, and we need to address it head on. And so, Ash, you came back from, you've had some other priorities for a little while, and you're back in the Dash Discord, and you've offered to use some of your incubator budget towards the SDK because primarily it's a prerequisite and dependency for the web Chrome extension, or browser extension. So do you want to tell us a little bit about what your motivations are and what you've been up to?
I feel like I've been saying the same thing for 2-3 years now, that for Dash platform evolution, the whole concept of it to succeed, it needs to be accessible to users and developers, which is an obvious statement. That's staying obvious to everyone. But the core part of that is the extension has to be very performant, and developers have to find it easy to integrate Dash platform either via an extension, via their own library for use on the web page, and otherwise. And every time that I brought developers into the incubator and they've worked on this, they have had an uphill battle against the SDK for various reasons, some of which have been resolved, definitely. But I've always felt that the SDK has been on DCG's, this is important, but this isn't our highest priority. They're working on, protocol level things. They're working on, functionality, consensus, whatever it is. But the actual the link between them, the public developer, and what's happening on the protocol and the public developers has been left by the wayside, and it's been more of an afterthought. Whereas it's something where that is essential for this to be adopted by developers beyond the current. We have some that are willing to work with it and overcome those hurdles and barriers, but the lower,
right?
Yeah, and if you pay them to do so. But the lower we make that friction point, the better. But also, it's the other advantages. It's the performance. It's the, it's the accessibility. It's the user contributions. Like even developers like Shenmik, who are fully onboarded with the SDK and understand it, being able to contribute to that code base is a different question entirely. Like if we are an open source project, we want more people reporting bugs, issues, and working on improving both the SDK and their apps that they're developing built on top of that SDK. And it's always felt kind of push down the line. And it's something where until we have that, projects like the extension, if we're going to have a MetaMask for Dash, we can't build it on. We could build it on this. We did, but it had so many issues. I brought up that extension. It got refactored and it was working again using the current SDK, but there were lots of delays, there were lots of issues. Mikhail's highlighted some issues recently in terms of create multiple transactions and just various problems that we faced that are coming to a point where we need to overcome this. And discussion has been going for months now. So the next steps are, how do we go from where we are currently to something that is built with those developers and end user projects in mind, really?
Yeah. And I have no intention of trying to make this be a talk, another talk about what all the problems that we're seeing. I just want to do that enough to make it clear that there are problems, but I would like to move towards the solutions. Now, we haven't had a lot of time to discuss that since the call yesterday, or since the discussion yesterday in Discord, which is, why we probably don't have a lot of the answers yet. But I want this to be another kickoff to something where we can really put our heads down. And with Mikhail, I'm going to give you a minute here to talk about your experience with the SDK, to talk about how we can actually fix this. From my own part, the platform, there's two main sides to the SDK. There is the core functions, which is like creating typical core transactions. That's built mostly on Dash Core Lib and Dash Wallet. These are libraries that we've had in the Dash ecosystem for quite some time. I would like those cleaned up because they're built on hundreds and hundreds of dependencies. And that's the primary reason that I had AJ working on a lot of the core functionality. And we've had proposals up for him to add platform support to the things that he's already done on the core side. However, AJ he's not nearly as experienced with what platform is and how to work with it as you are, Mikhail. So you are the one that has the most experience working with platform. So on the platform side, what's your experience been, and what do you think is the path forward?
Yeah. So currently it's very hard to work with the current SDK. Well, every people who work with the current Dash SDK notice a lot of problems, a lot of shortcomings, and it's actually expensive to build things because people, instead of building interfaces, building products, they spend time on finding issues, reporting it to the Discord, then waiting for the feedback. And instead of spending like 20 hours, 40 hours on the feature, they spend like 100 hours because they don't understand how it's working and why it doesn't working and why there are some issues. Not only that, there are some architectural shortcomings with the DApp applications, like in the way current Dash SDK works. It works from you specify a starting point where you want to sync from. By design, it was intended that in production is going to synchronize from the block 1, but there are over 1 million blocks in the mainnet already. I'm not sure how fast will it be. Maybe it's a working approach for like mobile application or desktop wallets, but for the browser, it's not really the case. So what's really about it? So when you're authenticating with your Dash SDK, like you're connecting your wallet, so there is no way to. So you have to put a height from where you start. So what do we do? Ask users about that. So Dash SDK that doesn't solve that right now.
There is an option in the configuration options when you're instantiating your client instance that you can say start syncing from this block. Is that not enough?
It's enough, but how do you know? How do you know where to start syncing from?
I remember when we were using it, we used to get the latest block height to speed up development. We just get the latest block height and just put that in there, like -2 blocks or whatever, just so it would sync instantly, effectively. But yeah, do we ask the user and say, hey, what block do you want to sync from? They don't know the answer to that. So
of course, yeah. So yeah, and it's kind of complicating. And if we go into the extension, things gets more complicated because Dash SDK is meant to download a lot of on-chain data like block headers for a future proofs verification. And it just doesn't fit into the extension. So extension just can't store such amount of data. It can store it in the memory, of course, but each time you visit, reload the page, each time you're restarting your browser, everything will be synced from the first block. And so yeah, the problem even not in the syncing instead, because extension have limited storage space, like 2-3 megabytes, which does not fit. Another problem is the bundling. The current Dash SDK have a lot of dependencies, a lot of libraries, which not really how it's called. It's not really polymorphed, or I mean, the final bundle is not working right in the extension environment. So there are a lot of things that we have to patch in the Webpack bundling. Current Dash SDK does not work in React application in production mode.
You're saying just a quick background on that. So when you're developing a product, software product, there are two main modes that you're working in. There's development mode, and then there's production mode. Development mode, the bundler that bundles all your JavaScript can act differently than when you say, okay, I'm done developing. I don't need this fast turnaround speed development cycle. I need a production bundle. And so you run a different command in your scripts that says, bundle this project and build it for production. And that can have differences. And you're saying that the differences in production, there are differences in production than development.
Yeah.
With how it works in its environment.
Yeah. And there are a lot of missing features in the current Dash SDK. It's not even feature complete for what we have now. So we're not even talking about tokens, about current implementations like NFT functions. I have added them, but there wasn't before that. There are not all queries supported by the DAPI exposed in the DAPI library. For example, the contested resources is not yet coded in the DAPI client, which means that you can't easily query the state of the identity names. And if the developer would want to implement support of the DPNS names in his application, his DApp, so he won't be able to do that. We worked around that by patching it ourselves in the Platform Explorer side. So we just made our own fork and added those functions so we could make it work on the Platform Explorer. But architecturally, like the query does not really give you a lot of info. So it does not give you a status of the contested resources, whether it's still pending, was it winning or locked. You can just judge it by one field won, by who won this contested resource, but there is no really reliable way to say if name is still pending. So yeah, there are problems, not even exactly in SDK, in different parts. In API, in WASM DPP, there are problems like with the bundling, because that's the problem of the WASM DPP. There are problems in SDK, and there are a lot of issues, but we don't have anything, and um, yeah, no work is being done towards that.
Okay,
So
so Michael Foster says, and feel free to continue your thought there, but I think it might be related to this. Should we offer to help DCG with their version of the SDK and work on that, or should we support AJ's approach of slightly different way of creating it? And then he says, by the way, DCG SDK is mostly on hold currently as they work on other things. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it depends on when it will be developing, because right now I didn't see anything. There is a proof of concept. I haven't seen that myself. Probably it could work, but I don't know, because we had seen a lot of code. So it's a hard question.
It is a hard question, and even if we answer that question, there are still other details that emerge. So there are a lot of questions, but I think one of the main questions is what do we try? What is our goal, and what are we trying to? Which customer are we trying to reach? And once you establish that, then you can establish maybe who might be helping us with that. So, for example, my main customer is Web 2 developers. I think that Web 2 developers, they're way more Web 2 developers than Rust developers, and so this is obviously, we're working under that assumption that we want to attract people outside of our existing community. Sure, we can have, Dash Money has built an application, and people within the incubator have built things. You've built things, Mikhail, but we want to attract people outside of our own community and have them have a good experience building applications on Dash. And for the most part, those people don't care so much about, do I have a fully trustless proof system built in Rust, and they don't care as much about that as, hey, this thing works for me and I can build applications quickly and store data on a persistent medium that's reliable and is easy to work with. So that's my main target audience is traditional Web 2 developers, and I think that having some kind of stopgap where we can build something that just works and works well, with an API in mind, that we can keep a consistent API, but change how the backend works under the hood to be more of what we want in the future, seems to be the best approach for me. But I don't want to put words into your mouth, Mikhail, regarding AJ, but I would like, and I think the community would also like, you to kind of be in charge of the overall architecture, since you have most of the experience with platform. And then would you welcome AJ helping you to do whatever parts you think he's well suited for, or do you think that you and your team would like to do it on your own, or what's your preference?
Well, I have no objections. We just need people to work on. Yeah, it's more a matter of the coding and the contribution. If we could achieve constant, frequent contributions without any pain, so it's no problem.
I guess returning to Michael's question, Mikhail, would you fork the current SDK and improve it, or would you start from the scratch up with a proof of concept where you have written from scratch?
I still will be working on the current JS SDK, at least until the new RSDK new SDK will appear. But yeah, what I want to do is to have an SDK, have a library which you can easily add features in, so you don't really get into the problems with a lot of dependencies. There are a lot of tests in the platform repository that you must follow. there are a lot of code style which you must follow. There's this code structure of SDK is not really easy. It's not really easy. So what I would like to see is some kind of basement that we can improve it iteratively and don't spend a lot of time on it. So that's the question that I want to really research and try to make some proof of concept that shows you that we can do this alternative way, and it could be option.
What would you include? Yeah, what would you include in that proof of concept from platform?
So it will behave similarly to the current JS SDK. It will use the WASM DPP bindings, but it will be redone. It will be redone like internally, so it will be more easily.
How redone? Because that's my main question is, do you take the current SDK that we have and remove things, or do you start from scratch and add things?
Start from scratch and from the new one.
Start from scratch and add things using the existing one.
Using WASM DPP, or we could extract some specific functions that we need for our SDK. Yeah, but
we start from scratch with a proof of concept which has identities, DPNS, top ups, and then
what we have now. We have a lot of experience of platform right now, how it should be working and what developer expects, and I guess we could redo that using the new ideas, new experience, and thoughts that how it could be done better. I think we should include optional features like like proof verification if possible in the future, so we could easily opt in proof verifications in the future. Possibly switch serialization to JS native if that is possible. We don't know that yet. AJ have done some work towards it. So the idea is to have some minimum valuable product that will make happy developers. That developers won't be bothered with unknown errors.
I guess there's a good analog here. If you're talking about redoing the platform side of the SDK, Ryan, you and AJ have redone a large side of the core. Let's using sort of that terminology, SDK. How have you found that process of redoing sort of layer one side of things and basically building that from scratch? How do they compare?
Yeah, I'm actually going to do a little screen share right now because I think that's a good
segue.
Yeah, segue here. Okay. Why did we, and why have we, meaning AJ and I, why have we done some of that work in the past? It's already done. The core work to slimming down and making it more secure. I'll show you. This is the npm. This is npmgraph.js.org. This basically tracks your dependencies. So I'm looking up the Dash SDK. This is our current Dash SDK. And when you're saying, Mikhail, that it's difficult to work with, this is why. Because the Dash SDK, all the way here on the left, it has dependencies. It has the wallet lib, for example. It has the wallet lib then depends on other things, which depend on other things. And this is very old. So DAPI client here, dash SPV, node fetch, which we wouldn't even need. Like we could eliminate this whole branch because fetch is built into JavaScript now. Here's your dash evo / dash core lib library that has tons of dependent. I mean, this is big, right? This is big, and we're only seeing part of it right here. So there are a lot of problems with this. That's why we started and created the core functionality, which was what AJ was mostly interested in. He's mostly interested in payments. And so we haven't done a lot with platform, but we have eliminated all of these through the libraries and modules that we've built in GitHub Hive. They're all here. Basically, we have them split into logical separation of concerns with -HD and -keys and -phrase. Each of these are developed independently, and they cover all of the core use cases that we have come across. So, and it does this, but it eliminates probably 95% of the weight and bloat. Each of these is all pretty much dependency free. So when you look at -keys, for example, I think -keys does have one dependency. And you look at, whoops, that was the wrong one, package.json, you'll see very few dependencies. You have some dev dependencies, but that's not production dependencies. So there are no dependencies in this, completely dependency free. And so you would see, let's see, I don't recall right offhand the NPM name of some of these right offhand, but if you were to look at them, let's see if the documentation will tell us. -keys. If you look at that on here, -keys, there it is. It's all in one package, and it's 13 kilobytes. And we could look at that for other parts of the SDK that AJ has written. And let's maybe look at one more just as an example. -HD. This is the hierarchical deterministic add-on to, each of these kind of builds on each other. And so there might be dependencies of it. This might depend on the -keys, for example. Let's see. Do I have documentation on installing this? At -incubator. Oh, it does. This is the one that does have the SEP 256K1 curve dependency, as well as -phrase, which is developed by AJ as well. -HD, again, there's that. I think we have -wallet as well, which was one attempt to kind of bring some of these together. Not attempt, it actually, this was a library that brought some of these together. So the -wallet depends on -HD, -phrase, can I zoom in here? -insight, -site, which actually this is something we would need to modify because AJ's found a better way to do this since we made this. But these are just an example of good, clean, modern code that's very lightweight, that covers all of the core functionality. And my hope is that, and was that we could do the same with platform. And Mikhail, we could leverage your help in building a similar library that just handles platform, and then we bring them together, and then we have a very lightweight extension that handles both core and platform.
Lightweight library at SDK that handles
an SDK that brings them together, right? So that's my ideal outcome. How are you feeling about that, both of you guys?
How compatible are they right now? Is that, are some of those libraries that you built kind of drop-in replacement, or is it a case where we'll have to work to make it work with existing SDK calls for transactions and things?
The API is different. So we would have to yeah, it's not like drop-in replacements for Dash.
But that could be wrapped. That
wallet
could be
lib, for example.
that could be that could be
it could be
down the
Jimmy
line, yeah.
rigged, yes. However,
where it makes sense to, it might not make sense to, you know, we shouldn't rely on legacy stuff that's come from BitPay or whatever and their approach if there is a better approach currently, you know.
Right. That's my point, is that, you know, our current Dash SDK is built around the BitPay decade plus old framework, and
like Insight. So
yeah.
old.
And so, Mikhail, do you think it's feasible to build like a platform only library that's somewhat standalone, and then we combine that with these core libraries to build an SDK that works, and that we could then even further retrofit with proofs if and when they come?
Of course, we will. Of course, we will see how it works. I think it should fit. It should fit that project. We will know better when we actually work on it, and yeah, we just start researching that and researching it in the way with thinking about how it will be later integrating by the other people. So try to integrate it in different applications, in different environments, in different use cases, extension, React applications, mobile applications, and so on.
One of the first things that I tried when I was like, this was probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, when I first started working with the SDK, I tried to, I put it into an AWS Lambda function, and ran into problems immediately because it wasn't supported by it just wasn't supported, right? It was also way too much memory, right? So getting it so that we can use an SDK in all sorts of environments, that's important, I think.
Of course.
Okay, so I also don't want to skirt around important and controversial questions that would arise with this, because there are preferences in DCG about how the SDK should function. So, for example, one of the big questions is, what kind of wallet does the SDK have? Is it an SPV wallet, or is it a traditional wallet that creates transactions client side and then broadcasts the created and signed transaction over a network using an API? And those are the questions. So how do you feel about like the SPV wallet versus more traditional, what's seen mostly in the industry, using APIs?
We had to think about that. So yeah, there are more questions than answers on that thing. I would like to stick with the DAPI queries as much as possible, but it looks like we still need some third-party indexers. For example, for authentication, as I said before, you have to set a syncing point where you sync from, and it is not possible with the DAPI to not having that. So probably it would be some kind of combination, at least at the first stage, when we find out how it's could be done more efficiently. I really would like to use only DAPI, but there are some shortcomings that we just cannot pass on, you know.
Yeah, using DAPI is ideal. It's just,
there's going to be workarounds. Like, there are going to be workarounds for certain things, and if
Of
we
course,
can iterate,
yeah.
we get it out
For
using
proof-
some workarounds, and then iterate. Like, that's great. You know, understanding those problems through discovery, through your development of this, and then saying, this is something we need to solve still. This is a problem. We're not verifying proofs. Like, we're not downloading, block headers to actually do much here. We've just shortcut a lot of that. That's fine. We just got to get this out and then iterate upon it. Like, trying to reinvent the wheel is a problem, definitely, but like, actually just building this and getting those baseline functionalities in a great library is just the starting sort of part to this, you know. I wouldn't want to like tackle everything straight away. You know, if there is a shortcut where there is an indexer, not for stuff which is like security sensitive, you know, or is higher risk, but if, let's say, instead of querying the DAPI for all the identities that are currently registered and then downloading that or whatever it is, that there is a third party that checks if you're trying to register a DPNS user, like it's got a list of the DPNS users. You know, you were saying earlier that you have to do like some reverse backlog. Let's say we use Platform Explorer to do that, and then when they're actually registering the DPNS user, it's then that's happening via DAPI. That's fine, because that will throw an error if it's not available, you know, or otherwise. Like, there are ways to speed things up and make things efficient without actually taking security sort of compromises necessarily. And then we can iterate. You know, I just want to like get this going. I mean, so we've decided that, well, we discussed that proof of concept, get something going. Potentially AJ would work on a serialization side of things in JavaScript. AJ's just put a really good comment on Discord talking about that Platform has quite limited sort of dependencies, which is, like it's not using very novel sort of algorithms, and sort of there's a lot of the stuff that we can still do within JS without relying on Rust, and where we need to rely on the Rust SDK, like the GropeDB side of things, or maybe serialization, then we can do. Is that what we need to get started? Like, what sort of timeline would we have in mind for this? Bandwidth wise, what do you have available?
I don't have any timeline right now because it's
it's
hard to scope. But I think like 1 month of some researches should give us the first results on how to approach, if the approach is working, and how easy is it really. Is it so hard as DCG says that we couldn't do this, or we actually can do this? What shortcomings can we take? What's the downsides? What's the benefits? So I think we will understand that. We want to have like it would be good to have this kind of proof of concept as soon as possible.
What let's say I got started this day. I put up on the incubator board, I put up 100 dash bounty for AJ to do the serialization library in TypeScript. You know, what can I do to how do we get this moving? I know that's kind of cart before horse.
First of all, AJ wouldn't build it in TypeScript. He would build it in JavaScript with types. And there's a difference there. Right. So what he would use JS with types. What's the term for it? JS doc. So instead of writing TypeScript files, you just write JavaScript files, which don't need to be compiled, but you do get the benefit of the typing system. So that's one. And I echo what you're saying, Ash, because that's the big unlock that we have right here with you recently coming back and saying, hey, I'm willing to put some of my incubator strategist money toward this, and I would like to as well, but I also know that just the money that you have is not going to be sufficient to finish this. So I wouldn't want people to think that Ash is coming in and giving his budget to AJ to work on this. That will basically give us a proof of concept starter to see if this is viable. But then you still need some budget to finish a proof of concept on the extension as well. So I wouldn't want you to spend a ton of your money. What I think we really need is, I think AJ's proposal needs to pass, but we start now. There are 2 weeks until that proposal deadline. I say we sprint for the next 2 weeks. We use some of your funds, some of my funds as well, getting the proof of work, the proof of concept, such that voters feel comfortable and confident that where we're starting with this, with Mikhail in the project lead position and using AJ as a resource, a developer resource, we do as much as we can in the next week. Even we do as much as we can in the next week, and I would love to have you guys back, potentially even AJ back a week from now, and instead of a month of research, let's just get started on a prototype right away. And if we can get something to show within a week or potentially 2 weeks, then let's just show what we can do.
Even if it's like super simple, like, it's just a case of just starting small and then iterating. I know we're not going to have all, in 2 weeks, we're not going to have all like a lot of platform functionality in a library. But if we could start to have like little chunks, like even one puzzle piece of that whole huge puzzle, it's a start, and it's just something to build from.
So AJ is actually in the chat now. He said he was referring to the TypeScript versus JS doc thing.
Yeah, it's actually possible to write JavaScript code, and you can just add the typings just for your functions, so you don't need to
as comments.
So I think one thing that I'd like to make clear is that none of this is to like undermine DCG or take anything away from their responsibility. They're obviously very busy. They have limited JS resources, and this is a JavaScript project aimed at JavaScript developers. And we have, 2 very, very capable JavaScript developers. And then I'm super amateur. And then Ryan, I'm not going to comment on your abilities, but, there's a mix of skill sets within the incubator that want to work on this from different points of view. And that is important, like me as an amateur JS dev, like I need to find this as usable as, I do find from other projects.
Exactly. I'm actually in your same boat, Ash. I consider myself an amateur developer in terms of actual practice, but theory, I have quite a bit of knowledge with the theory, and what I've been focusing on mainly is researching the existing Web 2 space to see what kind of how people developing applications these days, what do they find acceptable and not. And I can tell you that they will not find acceptable what we have right now. That's the main thing that I need to emphasize over and over and over again is you have typically applications are built using a framework like React or Solid or Vue or Svelte, and these framework authors go through so many pains to get the size of their libraries down to into the kilobyte size. If we come to them after millions and millions and millions of dollars are spent trying to get their framework down to kilobytes of size, and we say, just throw in this extra 5 megabytes, put 5,000 kilobytes on top of the framework that was able to get down to 10 kilobytes or something like that, they're just they don't want that, right? They won't want that. And so I can understand that, maybe our target audience is not web developers, and it's Rust developers who don't care about stuff like this. But if we do want to target web developers, which is my focus, then we need to meet them where they are and follow their values. And I know that if we can do that, if we can pull that off, I know a lot of influencers in the JavaScript scene, and I have, very, very close connections. I'll say 1-2 degrees of separation with some of the most influential developers. And if we can get them to get excited about building on Dash platform or whatever, or at least remove some of the hate that they have for the crypto scene because we're actually solving a problem that they have, then we have a chance at scaling out, right?
I think you're even taking a little bit away from crypto. Like I always like the analog, like I look back to the 2000s, showing my developer like age when I was last an active dev, and I look at Stripe and I look at how easy it was to integrate Stripe with very few lines of code compared to something like PayPal. And if we can make it accessible to write data to a decentralized platform, like within just a few lines of code with a very lightweight library, potentially even in browser tutorials sort of things where we've got an interactive terminal in the browser. Like that kind of experience is pivotal to making people have that eureka moment where they love the project, they love Dash, and they're like, yes, this is great. And I think any time that someone's using the current SDK, there's so much friction, it's immediately a negative experience, and we can take that away from them. And I think that DCG, the incubator, and all the work that we've done historically has been, the goal of that is to augment the work that's being done at the protocol level. And with DCG having limited JS resource because they are so busy, being able to step in and get this started, and also make it, the goal is to make this so anyone can contribute to it, whether that is a DCG dev or a third-party dev or an incubator dev, however it is, whoever they are. So yeah, just getting this started and getting the move on this thing. Good question.
When will Ash
That's a good question.
Continue work on the browser extension?
So the last update to the extension was Alex came in, took him off some of the DeFi work, and he got it refactored the code base, got it working with the SDK. There was a lot of issues there. Like I don't want to, like you said, I don't want to harp on around the problems with the current SDK necessarily. This is a chance to clean. But Alex had a terrible time working with some of that stuff, and also poor documentation on data contracts and things like that. Not just from DCG side, but even from the previous developer, there was next to no documentation. So it was a case of reverse engineering a lot of things. And it's just like, why have you done this approach? There was lots of calculating of bytes, if I remember rightly. The extension is there. There is a new manifest from Google for extensions. There's a whole new approach that I would like to take, where you use a sidebar as opposed to a pop-up extension. You can use a sidebar. Really good example for that is Uniswap have a wallet that is an extension wallet. It's beautiful. It works really well. There is a case to leapfrog to that kind of level. I don't want to. I can do some work on the extension, which will be more like UI, UX side of stuff until there is a good library. Because if any work that I do, it would then be kind of superseded by the new extension would then make it kind of redundant. Obviously, there is a case of backwards compatibility with the new SDK. I mean, but I think that would be cart before horse a little bit. With the incubator, when it was originated, a lot of the stuff we were doing was getting ready for platform launch. Now it's kind of the other way around. I'd rather build a good focus on the SDK and then work on the extension. That doesn't mean there isn't some stuff that we can do in parallel. This is Stuart, you make some good points. That's an interesting point of view.
I was just looking at those as well. Let's just talk about this real quick. This is actually one of our few Twitch commenters. So extensions prevent freedom, just saying. And then he says, when you build extension, you hard lock your users into Chrome, Firefox, etc.
Not hard locking. The extension is a choice. Let's be clear. We're not saying that everyone has to use the extension. There is, the Dash Pay sort of functionality and all that platform stuff will be in the mobile wallet. The extension will be, not locked into browsers. I agree in decentralizing everything, but I also agree in giving users choice. It's freedom is choice. And for some end users that only have a little amount, and they want things to be accessible, extensions are very appealing. Ultimately, this SDK that is the core focus of this discussion is designed for any developer to use in any vertical, whether they're downloading local browser JavaScript apps, they're running it in Electrum or the current equivalent of Electrum, whatever it is. There's a huge range of use cases for this SDK, even standalone sites where people aren't using an SDK, they're importing or uploading a key store or however it is. But yeah, this is the extension's a choice.
They all depend on the libraries and the SDK as the base level, no matter what platform you deploy this to. So, Mikhail, anything else that you wanted to say about that? Or
I don't know. There are a lot of things. So there are a lot of questions. But all we gotta do is just keep researching and just start doing something. Yeah, we will find out.
I mean, that's the thing. This SDK in the future, it can connect to your mobile wallet or your desktop wallet,
Yeah,
and it can have peer-to-peer
yeah.
communication
That's where extension
without an
could help.
extension. Well, you
Yeah,
wouldn't necessarily even need an extension. You can use, built-in browser features or peer-to-peer communication locally to, facilitate that, the requests going to the mobile app or otherwise. You could even do it through, QR codes, which are communicating to the mobile wallet what to do or otherwise. There's so many different avenues to fully decentralize this.
Yeah, we all agree.
Oh, whoops. Let's see. Yeah, JS SDK equals freedom. Yep, that's right. One time. My approach isn't slightly different. You can see how I've written the code, which is here. So yeah, there are differences of approaches here, and like I said at the beginning, and you've said, Mikhail, throughout as well. You probably said it too, Ash. There are more questions than answers right now, but it's important right now that we address these questions. We have some funding to work with through you, Ash, through me currently, but I'm concerned that if we throw more funding at that right now without having the network supporting AJ's current proposals, my proposal as well, that we will not have the funds required to finish this. So
this isn't a little project. When we talk about it being a lightweight library and stuff, this isn't a small project. There's a lot of work ahead for all of us on that front. I do really think that we should support AJ on this. Just looking at those dependency graphs and everything that you guys have done on the layer 1 side of things. I know there are going to be a lot of problems we discover along the way, and some of it might be insurmountable in TypeScript. We might have to rely on the Rust side of things for some things, GrowDB side of things, the proofs, like that's probably going to have to come from Rust and that side of things. But we're only going to get to that point by getting started and discovering and overcoming those hurdles. But yeah, this is a big project. We're not going to... when we say lightweight, when we say it's only going to be like kilobytes big, there is going to be a process to do this, and the funding that I currently have, which is around 300 Dash, will not be sufficient. I would support those proposals to help make this happen ultimately.
Yeah, but let's get started with it right away so that we can prove that we're on the right path. Is kind of what I'm trying to hope for, what I'm hoping for. Definitely. And I think if you're on board, Mikhail, with working with AJ and working with DCG, I think we can make a great SDK that works really well right now, and that we can iterate on later when we have more features and potentially a separate library for the proof system and things like that.
Yeah. I don't even know what else to say.
I guess at this stage, like we said, that this is discussion, more questions than answers. We're trying to kind of create a, where we want to get to with this and the steps to get there for now. And then along the way, there's going to be, twists and turns along that path. Ultimately, there is an end goal in mind for a lightweight library that syncs fast, has proofs, verified proofs, is decentralized to whatever degree, and we're going to get started and then work out how to get there along the way. There's a whole discovery process ahead of ourselves. And ultimately, if there are other developers watching this, the more eyes on this, the better. You want to help define those specifications. We want early testers. So yeah, obviously get in touch with any of us three, and we'll happily, involve you in sort of a working group to make this happen.
Okay, I think that we've talked quite a bit about this. I think the overall takeaway from me, and then I'll get an overall takeaway from you guys, Ash and Mikhail. My overall take is that we've got you, Mikhail, in somewhat of a lead role with SDK architecture. We've got AJ as a resource that can do some of the low-level JavaScript stuff that nobody else would be able to do as efficiently and as well. Ash and I, we're here to make sure that the users are getting what they need, and I think that's a good team. So, what's your takeaway, guys?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get started. We'll start with, whether it's the libraries. AJ can work on the libraries in parallel with this early proof of concept. Mikhail, you might, need to figure out the bandwidth side of things on your end, other developer, if you want to bring in another developer to kind of contribute to this. But let's just get started. Let's define the proof of concept that we want to build, what features we want to include in that, and just, let's get going.
One time says that. Thanks for the discussion. Good show. And LFG.
LFG.
Okay. Thanks, guys. If I can get you guys on next week, then that will be the next week's show. If not, we'll either not do a show or we'll maybe do it later in the week, or I'm not sure yet, but I'm hoping to make as much progress as we can right now until next week and through the voting cycle deadline. So we'll see you guys next week if we can pull it off. Bye.
See you around.